Fearless Women is sponsored by the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission.
So hi, I'm Angela Dominguez. I'm an author and illustrator, and I've worked on quite a few books. The books I'm going to talk today about is the Stella Diaz series, Stella Diaz Never Gives Up, which is the second, and this was the first, Stella Diaz Has Something to Say. And I am here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania with my little puppy, Petunia. She's a Boston Terrier Chihuahua mix. She's going to sit out for most of it, but maybe her head will pop back in. But I currently live in Virginia, but I'm up in Pennsylvania visiting my boyfriend's family. And I'm so excited to be here. So today I'm going to talk about specifically Stella Diaz Never Gives Up. And this book is the second. And when I was writing it, I was originally thinking, like, how do I continue the Stella Diaz character? And in the first book, she loves sea creatures and she has to do a big presentation. But it was very much based off of my own experiences. So when I started thinking about writing the second book, I was thinking about, okay, it's summertime. She just finished third grade. And this is a little controversial, but sometimes summer can be a little boring because when you're at school, you have somewhere to go every single day and you have something that you have to do. And in summer, sometimes our schedules are looser. And if you're like Stella, which is kind of like me, you like to stay busy. So she decides, because she loves sea creatures, that she's going to continue to study and learn about them. And it turns out she's also going to go to the Shed Aquarium Summer Camp, which is in Chicago. And so as she's researching more and more about the oceans, she realizes that they are in crisis in many ways. But a big problem is that there's too much plastics in the ocean. And so she gets very sad about it, but she realizes that with the help of some of her club members and also her camp counselors, that they can come up with solutions that we all can do, which is like things that we can do to cut back on plastic, simple little things that make a huge difference if we all do it. So in the book, there's a pledge that they make. And one of it is like to use a tote bag instead of plastic bags, to use reusable straws instead of a plastic straw, to use a reusable canister instead of using like bottled water or, just trying to use it. You could put juice in there as well. And also, if you're ordering takeout or you're taking your lunch to go, to use reusable silverware instead. And so they come up with this pledge, and it's about Stella, who is this character who is shy. And in the first book, she's really finding her voice. In the second book, she's still a little shy, and she has to use these conversation starters to kind of help her, which are like just fun facts that she shares to start a conversation. But it's about her learning to become a leader when maybe you don't have the loudest voice in the room. And so it's about this growth of this character and this continuing love of the oceans. And also it still has to do somewhat with her trying to fit in the world. Because like Stella, I was born in Mexico and grew up in the United States. And sometimes I stumbled with my English and my Spanish. And with this book, she visits Mexico and she kind of has that connection of like, what does it mean to be Mexican? What does it mean to be Mexican American? So there's a lot in this book that I feel like a lot of kids can relate to. And we're seeing all these wonderful activists like Greta Thunberg, who are really caring about the environment. And I wanted to show kids that they can be part of the solution in their own way, whether they want to use the pledge or whether they want to do something about a cause that they're super concerned about, like, protecting animals in Australia from the wildfires. So more than anything, I just hope this book inspires kids to speak up for themselves and also be passionate about something. So when I think about the theme of the book festival, ingenuity or American ingenuity, it's to me about coming up with clever solutions, original ideas. And, to me, it's so important right now, like whether we're speaking about the environment, like Stella is trying to solve the problem there with the plastics in the oceans, or it's about getting along with other people, or whatever it might be. This is a time where we need that ingenuity to help solve these big problems that are affecting all of us. And I think writing, reading books, it's a great source of where we can learn new ideas or get sparks for new ideas that can help us with these problems. So I feel like it's very timely. So the original seed or the idea that sparked the idea for this book was really just a love of reading and writing. Like growing up, I loved reading Ramona and all these books that were series like Babysitter Club. And I always secretly wanted to write a series. So when I thought about continuing this character, that really kind of sparked the idea originally. And then also just as I continued to read more about the oceans, I realized that there was so much more that Stella could talk about in a book. So there is definitely a specific inspiration for Stella. It's a combination of a few things. First of all, a lot of it is based off of my own personal experience growing up and having to take speech classes and stumbling with my English and my Spanish and feeling incredibly shy and turning real hot all the time, which means red or blushing. And so, I came up with this little character design of a girl with curly hair and polka dots. And then I started thinking about who is this girl? And I started writing her as someone being shy. And as I realized that it wasn't going to work for a picture book, which was my original idea, and I started expanding it as a longer story, I understood what it meant to be shy. And that's when I decided to put all of my own personal experiences. And some of it was like a little selfish, was just like writing what I felt and how I experienced growing up. But as I've continued to write these books, I realize how many kids resonate with that character, whether they just know someone who's like that, whether they're shy or they're from somewhere else, or where they are personally like Stella, where maybe they have a speech problem, or maybe they're shy, or maybe they're stumbling between two languages and they don't have their voice yet. And I think that's been one of the biggest things I've enjoyed is going to school visits and seeing kids light up when they hear a word in Spanish, or they realize that they're like Stella, and they'll tell me that either in private, or sometimes they raise their hand in a presentation, and then the teacher tells me that they never raised their hand, but they got so excited because they felt like they were seen in the book. The role that libraries have played in my life is huge. From being a little girl and checking out books, and I grew up in Texas, and they would have the Bluebonnet list, and I would try to read every single book on that list. And so that sparked my love of reading. And then as an adult, I continue to go as a place of research and inspiration, because like you can either discover a new author that way by going to the library, and then you get hooked and you want to read everything they do. Or for me, like when I've gone to research for Stella, usually the facts about the oceans is kind of what drives the story. So I might have basic ideas, but when I go to the library, what ends up happening is I get every single book I can on sea creatures or the oceans, and then I find these facts about particular mammals or fishes. And then I started thinking about how they could be metaphors for how Stella is feeling. Like particularly with the first book, when I found out that octopuses can escape through a hole like 1 inch wide, I thought about how if I was, if Stella was feeling scared or nervous or shy, how she would wish she could escape that easily like an octopus. So the facts that I learned from the books from the library play a huge role in my writing. And I think it's just like, it's such an incredible space that every time I go in there, I get excited by the possibilities of things I might find. So I think to anyone who wants to be an author, the biggest thing is to read, because reading gives you ideas. It also teaches you what makes a good story. And I think anyone who wants to write, or if they want to draw too, it's kind of the same to me, It's just about doing it, and don't be nervous about getting it perfect the first time you write it. Like, I usually am so embarrassed by my first draft because I'm just putting down everything onto paper, but then I go back and edit it, and that's when it starts turning into something that I become proud of, that I want to show people. So it's about having no fear, just committing to it, trying, because you can always undo. You can always take a piece of paper, throw it away, or delete your draft or create a new draft, and find the joy in editing it and making it better. And then I think stories are even better when you share. So if you can have a group that you can share your stories with, that can give you feedback, that will help even more, because one person by themselves only comes up with a certain amount of ideas. But once you get input from other people, it gets even better. Because every time I write a new Stella, I talk to my editor, and she gives me so many wonderful suggestions, and then it sparks even more ideas. So it's all about practice, having fun with it, revising, and sharing your story. Well, it was so good to be here with all of you, and thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoy the Stella Diaz books. And Petunia right here would like to say goodbye before we go. So, bye.